Hey guys, welcome to the Feel Good Podcast. For those that don't know, I just finished a 7-day experiment to find out what meals are the best to actually break a fast, and also to learn more about how the body actually reacts to different types of foods, since this is a question that's always been asked by the Fastic family. I did this experiment not alone, but together with the Hello Inside app and the CGM to see firsthand the impact of not only what I eat in terms of carbs, proteins and fats, but also how other things like sleep, movement and stress has an effect on the body and of course on the glucose levels. So once again it showed me that health should always be seen holistically, guys, and of course individually, since everyone is unique and has different things going on in their lives and obviously leads a different lifestyle. I really enjoyed this week and it brought me a lot of clarity and more insights, and I hope that with this episode today, we can also share these insights, answer your questions, and obviously give you some valuable tips and tricks on how to break your fast, and of course, review the last week, the last 7 days on how it went. And with me today again is Dr. Anna Latz, Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of Hello Inside, who has also supported me the last 7 days, which I'm thankful for. So let's jump right in and find out more. Hey Anna, great to see you again.
Yeah, great to be back. So happy to hear your questions on what you learned so far.
Yeah, 100%. First of all, though, I want to say thank you to your support and obviously the possibility to actually try the Hello Inside app and the CGM. Like the last 7 days, breaking my fast and actually seeing how these meals directly affect my body have been so eye-opening and really insightful.
Happy to hear that. Cool.
So yeah, maybe to start off, so it's obviously really important to me that our community also feels safe and finds out more for themselves what meals are actually the best to break their fasting window. Meaning I would love to talk about my experience, of course, with you, but also get your view on and your expertise on it in general. But starting off, I think it would be great to learn more about the basics. The basics when it comes to our body and glucose levels. So maybe we could start off by just going into what is a CGM, so a continuous glucose monitor, and why is it actually so important to measure glucose?
Yeah, I'm happy you bring that question up. I think that's very crucial. Before we go into hacks, we should always understand what are we measuring and why are we measuring it and trying to manage it. So what is a CGM? As you said, a continuous glucose monitor. It's like a little window into your body. I mean, we applied one in the last session with you. It's like this 5-cent piece size sensor on the back of your arm, and it, as the name says, continuously measures your blood glucose. That means the sensor we use sticks on your arm for 2 weeks, and that time for 24/7 really measures your glucose values. The tech, the device was introduced back in the 90s because it was used for as an alternative to the blood testing, the glucose testing of diabetes patients, actually to improve their treatment, to really find out what's the best timing of their medication, etc. But as you already might expect, it's also super relevant, and more evidence shows that for healthy people, because a lot of us, without knowing it, have like an energy crisis in our bodies, and there are a lot of benefits of a stable blood glucose. Short term, it could be something like the energy, fatigue, etc. Midterm, rather stuff like weight management. And long term, and that's the most important actually to it, it's a really impressive tool to prevent diseases like diabetes and other metabolic diseases, because it can be really a precursor to a metabolic syndrome. So like a combination of different diseases of our body.
What really surprised me, actually, just to go back to before the 7 days, that it just didn't hurt. And even more important, during the 7 days, it didn't disturb me at all. So during the day, when it came to actually doing sports, having a shower, going to sleep, it was just like having it being part of my body. So that was really positive and a really good experience because I was a bit wary. I was like, okay, will this hurt? Will this be like annoying during the day? But it really wasn't. It was, and I like how you just described it as like a window into your body, like obviously checking in with the app every day. That was really cool. And
Cool.
I was thinking a lot during these 7 days as well, and I got some questions in, and I kind of thought it would be also important to just like talk about, because it can be quite confusing at times with so many different terms. If you could explain, please, some differences when it comes to the words and terms: blood sugar, blood glucose, glycogen, insulin, and ketosis. I know there are quite a few now, what I'm saying, but maybe we can just start off with them one by one and then actually explain it a bit.
Yeah. One comment to the first remark you made, I think that's also for people really important to understand. You can swim with it, go to sauna with it, with the CGM, do sports with it. So first of all, you don't feel it, and it really survives all that. So that's on that side. And yeah, let's please go a little bit into like a glossary, because I know the terms we are throwing around, they are very confusing. So the first you said is, what's the difference, or what is it? Blood glucose, blood sugar. It's actually the same.
Yes, exactly.
So glucose is more like, I would say, a little bit more medical, academic term, but people mostly in the lingo, also in German, would be Blutzucker. So it would be really always that word we would use. And the blood actually, in that term, just refers to where the glucose actually is to be found. So it's swimming around into our vessels in the blood. And there it can be measured. And that's where the name came from. That's where it's available for our system. And glucose by itself, it's actually sugar. So it's our main source of energy. And you get it in by your diet. Easiest would be eating carbs. If you eat starches or sugars or also sugary drinks, and then your body breaks it really down, the carbs, into glucose. And then use it as a fuel, actually the preferred fuel in our body. And if you don't really in that moment use it up for energy you would need in that moment to do something, then it's stored, and it's stored either in our muscles or in our liver. And in our liver, it can be released then later on if we need it. And actually, you also mentioned the term glycogen. This is actually the stored form of our glucose. So all the glucose molecules we have, they are connected into longer lines. And that's actually the glycogen. So blood glucose and blood sugar the same. Glucose actually available sugars in our body, and glycogen the stored version of it. Yeah. So what else did you want to know? Insulin, right?
Insulin, please. Yes.
Insulin, yeah. So the insulin metabolism, very closely connected to our glucose metabolism. It's a hormone, insulin, and it's produced in our little organ that's called pancreas. And every time we eat or drink, etc., so every time we get like a trigger into our body, the pancreas produces insulin. And this hormone helps us to really access the energy in the food by unlocking our cells. So it's moving the sugar, it's moving the glucose into the cells, and there it can be really used for fuel. So very crucial. And so we get an insulin response to when we eat. So that is like really the basics. And that is also something that's really crucial to understand insulin as a hormone. It's not a bad thing. It's actually really good that we have it in our body, but it needs to proper function and really be the cells need to be sensitive to open it up. Yeah, and then you wanted to hear about ketosis. That's, of course, I think also for your community quite interesting. That's really, you could say, a metabolic state that happens when your body burns fat instead of glucose. As I said, glucose is our preferred fuel. It's our number one fuel because it's like the easiest to use. But when your carb intake is rather low, then your body can switch or should learn to switch to other fuels, and this can be used by diets that are rather high in proteins or fats then.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. That's definitely helpful. And so in my opinion, and that's why it was important also to bring in these questions, it's so important to know and understand things like this, right? Since it's our body in general is so complex, but it's our home and we live in it, and we should obviously try and take care of it. So I think that education is such an important thing when it comes to the body and to health, what is also missing because not all of us get the right education. So this is what the Feel Good Podcast is there for as well. So thanks again for explaining that. I think it's really valuable and answers a lot of these questions. Maybe we can also dive into what impacts the blood glucose in general, that you can give us a bit more input to that.
Yeah, love that question, because that for me was kind of the biggest surprises, although I've been in the medical field for a long time. I mean, the obvious factor that you would say impacts the blood glucose, we mentioned that, touched that a lot, is nutrition. But actually, all our lifestyle pillars, all those pillars that are closely connected, impact our blood glucose. So, thus being nutrition, but also movement, sleep. It might be stress. It's our hormones. So, all those factors influence the blood glucose. You would think like, oh God, that's so much I have to be aware of. And the other way around, you could say there's so many tweaks and hacks you can use in one of those pillars that support each other that you then can really manage your blood glucose the best. So I really love that there's so many interdependencies, thus being a little movement after you eat something makes a strong impact. And then you can really experiment and take it from there.
Yeah. Definitely. I said it at the beginning as well in the intro that I find it so important, or it showed me once again as well the past 7 days of doing it with Hello Inside, that it's just health is always holistic, right? You should always see it holistically. It's not just nutrition, it's not just movement. It's obviously a combination with movement, mindfulness as well. When it comes to mental topics, stress has a huge impact as well. Yeah. I 100% agree. What would you say is a healthy range for the blood glucose, and what is maybe not really healthy?
Yeah, I mean, that's also very, very important and very great question. Something I cannot answer completely by now, because first of all, there's a huge variety. It's a very personalized approach to that topic, because there are different phenotypes and people just in general have a different basic level of blood glucose levels. But still you can influence them. And what we by now know in most of the studies, it comes from the diabetes patients. So that is a little bit the where we're coming from. So we know some thresholds where you would say, oh, fasting glucose of XYZ would be pre-diabetes. And this mostly applies to blood glucose levels really tested in the blood. So this is the first remark, disclaimer. We do not diagnose you by wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, but really just give you an idea of patterns and how we react to certain foods. What I can talk a lot about and what we are also focusing on is what we call the postprandial glucose response. So what happens after a meal? So after a meal, there's a certain reaction to food. There we really have, at least in our Hello Inside app, quite a strict healthy range where we want blood glucose to be. In general, we have a range between 80 and 110 milligram per deciliters. There's also, in other countries, there's millimole per liters. So don't be confused if you cannot make sense of those numbers immediately. But this healthy range is something we would love the users to be in most of the time of the day when they're awake. Night is completely different. There's also sometimes ups and lows. But during the day, we want them to have a range that's between 80 and 110. But this is something, you can aim up as a benchmark. And if you go after a meal up to 120, 30, 40, that's completely normal. That's really not something you should be afraid of. That's also what we really educate a little bit more in the app, showing different scores to it. But just to clarify, what we want to avoid is really these sharp, really spiky glucose levels. So when your blood glucose really rises above 140 or really has like a span of 60 milligram per deciliter in 30 to 60 minutes after a meal. So if it really goes up that steep, this is something where we say, okay, this is not in the healthy range anymore. Something triggered your blood glucose to not have like a soft really rise and then like a wave going down again, but really has this spike. So when I would first work with my blood glucose, I would always go for looking at patterns and triggers and try to find out what really leads to these spiky levels. But if you eat something and you started like, let's say 95 milligram per deciliter, and then your blood glucose after an hour is 128, that's completely fine, because it's a normal response. If you, for example, had a pasta, I would be even surprised if it wouldn't go up that far. But the point is, it's not like a sharp increase, but rather the soft shape.
Makes sense, yeah, and also very valuable. I find that with the app, that's what I like the most about it, to actually look at patterns, what we have, and like you said, the spikes to see what effect different foods have. Of course, pasta, for example, had a major effect on my body as well compared to, for example, a salad. I would like to touch on that later on as well. But I remember at the beginning, I had numbers between 100 and 120, even in the fastest state. And I got a bit worried, and I thought I might have something. But after calling you, and you obviously explaining it to me that this can be normal, I was also in a lot of stress. I had a bit of I think like an illness, maybe a cold. So I was suffering off there. Again, we can see that it just has an effect on the body. It's not just obviously what we eat, but also other topics. So it was really good to talk to you. Maybe for people who face similar challenges in this sense, that they start off and they see high numbers, what can you tell the people to how to deal with that when they see that?
I think that's also good that, of course, we had the chance to chat about it, and that the first positive thing is, of course, you're interested in what could be triggers here. And that's why I also wanted to stress it's not a diagnostic tool.
Yes.
It's not everything you find in internet on like blood glucose levels can be compared to CGM, although it's a really good proxy. But what I would always tell people is to really observe for a longer time. So if you have it in the first and the last day of the sensor, is always a little bit messy data because it gets calibrated. So that one is not to overestimate anyways. Then really observe for fewer days. And you already touched on that. That was also for me and from a lot of people in our community, one of the biggest surprises. Stressors of any kind can lead to the fact that your baseline, so like your morning levels, your normal levels, just cannot come down. It just makes sense. Think about what it does. It gives you energy, like the fuel, the glucose that's in your system. Yes. And if you're stressed, you need to be in fight or flight response. So your body prompts you for that. Same as you said, if you might have a cold or something, fighting something. So that would be the first. Is there any like chronic stressor I could have? Am I not sleeping super well? So there are a lot of reasons to it. And really more being a detective and not like panicking or anything. For people who worry for a longer time or really see they cannot find a trigger to it, then I would recommend just go get a lab test at a normal doctor for some time. And what you can always do is also reach out to us, because our team of nutritionists and experts can help you make sense of the data. Look at scores with you, because we have the different scores that really give you feedback. Is it certain meals that trigger you? Is it maybe even your coffee in the morning? So there are very tiny levels you could find out, and really being the detective to understand your body best, as you also nicely put it.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, and I can definitely reassure that as well. After talking to you, I felt so good, because it's just like calm my nerves, to be honest, but also I saw then with my levels that they just straightened out. So it's definitely something great to have, and a great device to also, I find, to prevent illnesses as well, like for example diabetes type 2, right? This is also something, when coming back to what you said before, with identifying patterns and seeing what's going on, what can obviously lead to people preventing illnesses like that. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, 100% yes. So what I love most about it, also in general, the combination of tech and health, is that prevention is not sexy for most of the people, but it can be playful, interesting, fun. So that's really what I love to see about it. And I always say, if you just change one thing for the rest of your life, which you find out by looking at patterns and experimenting a little bit, that's a lot. Just think about how you drink your coffee. I always have to give that example but people really hate me for it, because it's for most of people, oat milk is not a good choice for the first drink in the day, because it's really highly processed and spikes your blood glucose, and you might be tired again at 10, although you just had your oat milk latte. And this is exactly when you find out, okay, what would be a nice swap for my coffee milk combination, and you do that for most of the days of your life. This is a huge change that really impacts your health long term. And it might sound hard to not drink your oat milk latte, but I can tell you there's some nice swaps, and it's something you can really incorporate in the long term. And this is really what I love about it, really becoming expert of your body and your daily lifestyle. Yeah.
It's funny that you just said that, because this is also something what I tried. I tried to try my coffee with different plant-based milks, and it was definitely the case what you said. So oat milk had a whole different effect than other ones, and I've actually now switched it. When I do have oat milk, or in future I will. I will maybe go and have it again. It's not that I'll strictly say no, but I actually did switch it already based on that. So that was actually the first result already, what I got from you guys. So a big thank you to that, because otherwise I wouldn't have known that. I obviously knew that oats have that it probably spikes higher than almond milk or soy milk, for example. But I wasn't aware until I actually saw it with the data. And as you said, that what makes it so inspiring and so good to have health and tech come together and to use it in a way that is playful, but also gives you the valuable insights so you can optimize things. I really love that approach. And obviously in the last 7 days, it was my goal to find out what meals are best to break a fast, or in this case to break my fast. And after 7 days, I can also say I guess I'm a bit smarter than before, at least when it comes to this, not in general, but when it comes to this, I'm a bit smarter. And I can say for 100% a salad for me is definitely the winner in breaking a fast, or even a handful of nuts with some berries. This had the best effect on my fasting. Also, I had apple with a bit of like a nut spread. It was like an almond nut spread what I had. That was also really good. And next to that, what I also learned in the 7 days was definitely the order of the meals. So first having veggies, I saw for myself, then coming to second to proteins and fats, and last having carbs like potatoes or rice. That was like a big winner for me, and also changed how I saw the spike as well in the Hello Inside app. That was really, I was astonished about that. I mean, we talked about that at the beginning, and I was like, okay, I need to try this out, but it actually does work. Right? And 100%. And last but not least, the third thing, what I found really interesting too, as you also mentioned in the first call, and I can definitely say it works, is movement after a heavy meal. So that really helped like flatten the glucose curve. So just for example, I went for a 20-minute walk, or I just actually did a few squats after the meal, just to try out. I don't think I will keep doing squats after having a meal, but having a nice little walk for 20 minutes is really cool.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you tried it out, and that's a lot of the glucose hacks. I mean, I think the most important is to find those that you can incorporate easiest into your life, and then just try to stick with those and experiment a little bit more, because seeing is believing. I mean, if you see it in the curve, then it just makes more sense in your body. And that's what I love about those hacks, because you can really apply them easily if you're at home or even traveling. Some hack would always work.
Yeah, definitely. I said as well in the intro that next to seeing health holistically, it's also important to see it individually. So all these results I've made, this is based on my body. I just want to make sure that everyone who's watching this right now knows that. Please give it a try. I can highly recommend to actually test it with Hello Inside, because it's really great to see it, but see for your own self, because what works for me maybe not works for you. But I think in general, it is pretty safe to say that a salad or a handful of nuts with berries is quite a good way to break your fast, compared to maybe a heavy meal with high carbs in the sense of just having pasta. At least that's what I would say. For sure. And what would you say? Would you go along with that?
I mean, personalization is the key here. Really find out what works for you. I mean, women and men have very different bodies and different fluctuations of hormones, etc. But in general, I would say most of the hacks, veggie starter, whatever suits you from a taste, I would recommend to go with also something you like. Nuts is always a great choice because it's a nice source of proteins and fats. And especially when breaking a fast, I mean, you're the expert here, we could expect rather a strong reaction of the blood glucose after a longer fasting period. And that's why it's here so important to have those tips to break the fast and really be consciously in their choices here. And as you said, even the meal order just makes a really good difference here. Also go rather for something savory, I would say. I would say nuts also count as that, or avo, or eggs, or tofu, fish, whatever. In that direction, that's always a good choice to really break the fast and go into it. And then of course next step is to find out what really works for you, because we are very habitual in what we eat, and do not like to give up a lot of things we love. And that's why I always encourage people to really experiment in what combination does it work best, in what order does it work best, so I can really have that still in my life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the beauty of your app as well in general, because it actually, like you said before as well, it shows you, or you can see exactly what effect does it have on your body. And this is actually very strong arguments to then change maybe the one or other habit that is not that beneficial, right? But yeah, I think that breaking a fast, especially after longer fast, with a smaller meal, like for example a little salad or some nuts and some berries, and then waiting a bit to your digestion system getting started, and then having a bigger meal, and then using that order, vegetables first, then proteins and fats, maybe some fish, for example, and then starting with last but not least carbs, of course, because it's not that carbs are bad, because I think this is also something that is always out there, but of course there's a difference in processed empty carbs and then obviously healthy carbs. So yeah, this is definitely very interesting, and something I will touch on more on later as well. But maybe you can share some of your own personal experience, and maybe of your community where you were actually surprised yourself, even as a doctor, in seeing those things.
I mean, also maybe alluding to what I said with like the oat milk. I mean, oat milk has a very good image for a long time, and that was something a lot of people were surprised with. What we found out, what works super well for those drinks like oat milk latte, whatever, rather see it as a dessert. Think about how it tastes. It's rather sweet. So think a meal order, you can have it after your lunch, for example, just not like at 3 in the afternoon without eating anything to it, but really after it. So that would be also a nice way to think about snacks and sweet stuff and desserts. So you can also have that, but be smart on the timing here. A lot of things people, that's actually one big bucket people are very surprised of, including myself, when you really see the effect. Allegedly healthy foods, which might not very glucose stable, but rather lead to the spike, like this really sharp increase. So juices, smoothies, porridge, all those things lead to those spikes, mostly for people early in the morning. And the problem is if you really have those spikes the first thing in the day, that leads you on this blood glucose roller coaster for the rest of the day. So the solution here would really be to reduce processed stuff like juices and smoothies, because these highly processed fruits do not have any fiber, and that's actually what we want. We want to have the veggie starter because of the fiber, and the same for the porridge. Here, really, there's always the saying of like cover your carbs, so put a lot of nuts, nut butter, Greek yogurt, or vegan alternatives, whatever it is, something with coconut. Put it on to really have a nicer spike here. So breakfast choices, I think, are often super, super surprising for people. And then the other big bucket is sauces. So sushi, a lot of people react to it. Rather, it's the rice in the sushi per se, or it's a soy sauce to it. In general, like eating out, salad dressings, Asian places often have so highly sugared sauces, where you would actually think, oh, nice, I have like this tofu veggie meal, and then you have like the enormous spike, and then you try to find the sauce to it, thinking about being a detective again, and then you see, okay, like this sauce is just pure sugar in it. So this is something that's a little bit harder to get to when you eat out, but also something you should be aware of, that the healthy choice you cannot really only judge by the cover.
Yeah, that's really good that you touched on both of these topics. I think both of them is very important as well. Like going out has a lot of, I wouldn't say now dangers, but a lot of pitfalls or a lot of things that can happen. So it's really good to being aware. And here again, I think it's really helpful as well to have your app, because you can also see the effects. Because usually you go out, you eat something, and then later on maybe you feel a bit down or low on energy, and you don't even know why. And this can obviously show you as well when looking into the patterns. Hey, okay, every time I go out for a meal, this happens again. What am I actually eating there? And then when you track it in your app, you can see it and then make changes. I think that's really good. Also, what you said, I think is really important to touch on, because I think it's still a thing that a lot of people out there get that confused sometimes. Let's take the juice as an example, that you take a freshly squeezed orange juice and yeah, it sounds really healthy and really good, right? And I think it's such underrated, or fiber is so underrated, and the importance of that. And it's obviously a huge difference in eating an orange or drinking a big glass of orange juice. Even though, like I said, it sounds healthy, it has obviously lots of sugar. And obviously, if you look at this throughout the day and what else you actually consume, this can just be too much at the end of the day, right? So I think it's really good that you touched on that. So yeah, for me, what would be important to also touch on is a topic that I've seen obviously a lot of times. I guess you have too. Is fat burning versus carb burning, and obviously for our community, how fasting is beneficial for that. So could you explain a bit when it comes to those okay, not getting this word out today again for this process.
Yes, happy to.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So that's good. We had our glossary a little bit in the beginning. Remember our insulin, the hormone, which is triggered every time we enter glucose into the system. So when we eat, drink something. So the side effect is it really impacts our fat metabolism. So you could say it inhibits really fat burning. Because as long as we have carbs coming in excess, so the easiest fuel, you remember, glucose is our preferred fuel, then insulin levels are high because they do their work and putting the glucose into the cells. And our body just won't go to the fat storage, because why should I go the more complicated way when I have the easy carbs happening? And because our body really always prefers this easy source over other energy sources, fasting could be helpful here, because not only like intermittent fasting, but the easiest step for people to start into is just like have windows of not eating between meals. So ideally more than 3 hours. I know it's always complicated. Sometimes it's very social, lunch meetings, whatever. But start with trying to have this period or already during the day, maybe like 3 hours, like not throwing in more like little glucose and then insulin triggers, because then your insulin can bring down your blood glucose, and then your body can really access the fat cells for energy. Otherwise, you could store like glucose away. You will never go to the fat, and then you could gain additional weight.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's also important to understand that and to expand in our glossary today. I think it's been a lot of valuable infos from your side. In general, I really love the approach that there are companies out there as well, like Hello Inside, who want to provide this education, but also education that is personalized and with a context. I think that is really great what you guys are doing, and just in general using the tech, the advantages we have with health. I think it's just incredible, and I'm definitely someone who likes this. I know that there are also people who are a bit wary of it, but I think it's important to give it a try yourself and then judge it, because then you can really make your judgment if this actually works for you or not. But I think what would really be interesting as well for me personally, but also I'm sure a lot of people who actually are listening now, is like, how does Hello Inside want to impact the future world, and where do you want to go? What are your plans in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super convinced, and 100% check after what you said. Like, we have to find a smart and healthy way to work with tech, to work with data, and bring that into our lives. I'm super convinced that the CGM, the continuous glucose monitoring, managing your blood glucose, and all those influencing lifestyle pillars, stress being a very important one of it, that really will be in our toolbox to have a expertise of our body, to have a really healthy and also a very happy life. I mean, we're on the Feel Good podcast, so the goal is also to feel good in your body, to understand it best. And I think there's blood glucose just a really cool lever, because it's this real-time feedback, this closed loop that gives us more access to what we do. So weight is not a good proxy to that, because it's really midterm. There's so many influencing factors. And for behavior change, I think that will be just really, I'm 100% sure we will all be very aware of blood glucose and more educated about it. But it will be just one part in the toolbox. I mean, just think about what we already learned in the last year, and like heart rate variability, about step counting, about sleep and recovery. So a lot we are learning here and putting together. That's also what we want to build with Hello Inside. We're thinking more on a platform on metabolic health, and really like being the key, being the window, being the CGM, but adding lab tests to it, adding different trackers to it. So I have really this integrated approach. And then very important to educate, because you can only manage what you can measure, yeah, but you need also data literacy. You really need to make sense of the data. I mean, you experience it. First of all, you just see values and you're like, whoa, what does it mean? And you don't feeling better, but really stressed. And this is the next layer to it, to make this data actionable, really approachable, and combine those together, those knowledge pieces together, break the message really in our community in a very playful, in a very sustainable way, and really make behavior change an easy and fun choice. And I think that's what we're standing for, and where we're in a really good way. Also, thanks to your community and people who really talk about it, and you trying it out and spreading the word. But I'm a huge fan of really seeing tech and data as an enabler to be more human and feel very good about your bodies.
That sounds beautiful. I really like that, and I will definitely carry on spreading the word for you guys, because I was really convinced in the last 7 days, and it really, I love doing this experiment with the Hello Inside app, and of course with your support. So it helped me figure out not just the best way to break my fast, but also make more aware decisions, maybe a small one, like for example, the oat milk, what I think in general will just benefit me along the way for long-term health. So I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, great to hear that. And as you said, like those small changes, they really sum up in the end. And that's really the important, because then it's feasible and something we can do for our health really every day.
Definitely. Also, thanks for joining us today. It really was great to go through it more in detail today. I think this is also what's so valuable as well, because it's just important. I mean, we said it so often today, but education is the key as well, to understand yourself, but also obviously from a personalized approach with context, so you know what's actually happening in your body. So thanks so much for joining, Anna.
Thank you for being such a great host.
And for everyone watching, comment down below if you have further questions, and if you are interested in trying out the Hello Inside app. We will also include the link down below so you guys can check it out. I can definitely say it's definitely worth a try. I had a great week, and like I said before, looking at health holistically is key, and finding out for oneself what works and doesn't, since we're all individual, and it makes lifestyle changes obviously to make sustainable change that we need in order to stay consistent on our journey to a fulfilled, healthy, and like Anna said, happy life. So with that being said, I wish you all a great day, a lot of good vibes, and last but not least, love, take care, and see you next time.